In the name of Almighty God, good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing great. As you remember, for a month, we discussed research methodology and we touched upon various dimensions of the three chapters. So, in this session, we start from chapter 4 and continuation. We're in pursuit of the previous sessions. So, today we start from chapter 4, and the date is also 24/12/2023. So the contents of our today's session is initially we're talking about the importance of formulating a research problem, but it is crucial before talking about the importance or significance of formulating research problem. I deem it really necessary to give you information about research problem itself, about the nature and what, for example, a research problem is. We will be talking about this. In pursuit of that, once we are clear, once we are familiar with research problem, then we will be focusing on the significance or importance of formulating research problems. So it means that we will be talking about like prominent role that formulating research problem or research problem itself plays in a research investigation. Second, we will be talking about research or sources of research problems. Means that we will be talking about initially where does a research problem come from. So how can we identify, or even we can say choose or select one for ourselves? Then if we are in need of a research problem, or we can say sometimes research question, then where should we looking be, or where should we be looking for it? And second, right, there are certain distractions or considerations when we are talking about formulating or forming or choosing a research problem. There are certain considerations. I mean that there are certain concerns that we have to pay attention to in order not to face any problem in the future. So while we are carrying out our research. So these are the three main themes that we are talking about today. So the first one is how formulation of research problem is important in a research investigation. And second, what are the sources of research problems? So where should we be looking for research problem? We should refer to books, we should refer to internet, we should refer to where journals or maybe some other experienced people or what. And the third theme is, so what important points should we consider when we are formulating a research problem? So these are the main contents. So throughout chapter 4, the key terms that we are facing include concepts. So basically, probably you're already familiar because we discussed the word concept and then dissect. So these are some key terms. By the end of this chapter, which today is part of our fourth chapter, we will be familiar with all these words with their definitions, like operational definition, qualitative research, and then quantitative research, and then research objectives, research problem, study area, study population, subject area, and then validity and variable working definition. So probably variable is not included there. I mean, here are certain key terms or concepts that we are not discussing them today. So I have brought these key terms here in order to highlight that these are the main terms or the terminologies that we have to understand when we're talking about research problem. So basically, let's scrutinize things, or let's have a deep look or profound look at some few questions in order to make things very objective or to make it really clear to you what we are talking about today. So the first question that we are asking right now, even you dear students, ask yourself right now, then what is a research question? Or we can say what is a research problem, because problems sometimes surfaces as question and sometimes it may surface as a statement. Then what is a research question or a research problem? Both are the same. They are not really very much different, but maybe in terms of nature. So research question is a question, but research statement is a statement. So, I mean, the function or the role and even the significance of both is the same. I mean, there is not any difference between the two. So, right now, ask yourself, what is a research question? So, basically, let's talk about this in a non professional language. So, what it really indicates to us is a research question is a question that we are carrying out a kind of research investigation. So basically, it should be something like that. But later on, we will detail about this. So we will look into research question. Is it really possible for any question to be a research question? For any problem to be a research problem? Or what extra, for example, tasks are given to us in order to trim a particular question fitting into a particular subject area in research methodology in order to transform that question into research question. So we will be detailing. And next, what is the importance of research question? Probably the second question we are asking ourselves and you are asking yourself is, how if we do not have any research question in our research investigation? Is it really possible? We will have a look into that. We will be talking about the importance of research question, and we will definitely notice if our research, for example, a study lacks research question, what will happen in our research? Is it really a research investigation or not? We will be detailing about that. And third question is, what is the source of research question? So as I already talked about this, when we are in need of formulating a research question, where should we be looking for? So is it really available everywhere? Where should we refer? Then today we are particularly making ourselves familiar with the sources of research question. Where should we should be looking for research question? In fourth, what consideration do you need to pay attention to while you are formulating your research question? Assume or imagine that you got familiar with every dimension of research problem and now you're ready and you are absolutely ready to compose a research problem or formulate a research question. Now, what important considerations or what important, for example, facts are there that while you're formulating, you have to consider them? So, we will be detailing about these four questions. Or, in other words, we can say by the end of this session, you as a student should be able to provide answer to what is research question, and what is the importance of research question, what is the source of a research question, and what considerations do you as a students need to pay attention to while you are formulating your questions, research questions. So now we are having a look at the overall aim of chapter 4. So chapter 4 is basically dealing with formulating research problem in the steps involved there, in the requirements, considerations, and any aspects related to formulation of research problems could be presented in chapter 4. Then the overall aim of chapter 4 is to actually provide us kind of detailed information about the process and steps of formulating a research problem. So, however, the specific process that you need adopt depends upon, suppose that the book is providing, or this textbook is providing as many steps. But imagine that you are really experienced researchers. You already know what is what. You are already familiar with methodology, with variable, with design, with the formulation of research question, with the nature of research question, subject area, whatever. So these steps that have been given are basically for beginners. So beginners are required actually to go through these steps or adopt these steps. Suppose that you are already familiar with these steps. So while you're familiar with these steps, probably there might be some shortcuts for you. You do not necessarily need to actually go through every step individually. So most of the way you are dealing with, for example, formulation or formulating your research problem depends upon these facts. What are the facts? Suppose that You have enough expertise, so you are, for example, a professional person in the area of research methodology. Then you do not basically need to restrict yourself to the steps provided by the author here. So the author has done some or has brought some primary steps in order to instruct beginners, you as a student. But if you are already an experienced, for example, a student, an experienced researcher, you do not necessarily need to restrict yourself to those steps. Now, so the first thing which is really very important for you while you're formulating your research problem basically depends upon your expertise. If you have sufficient enough expertise in your area or particularly in research methodology, you do not need to actually restrict yourself to these steps. And second, your knowledge of the subject area. For example, you're carrying out a research investigation about a particular area that you are a master at that particular area. So suppose that you know more than anybody else in your subject area. So you know how to, for example, formulate your research question. Then it is not really necessary and even it is not logical to adopt, for example, those steps given by anybody else, for example, here. So, and second, third, your understanding of the issue to be examined. All right. Since you are experienced, you have enough knowledge, I mean background knowledge, and you have enough expertise. So the way you understand the problem or the research question is probably different from that of mine or from those of the others. So that is the idea that you cannot, or even that is not logical and rational to restrict yourself to those steps given by authors or by anybody else, because your understanding is very weak. Is very deep and profound in that particular issue or problem. You know more than anybody else because of your background knowledge of subject area, because of your expertise, and because of your experience. Then that is good to actually go on independently. Of course, you can look at the others or you can look into the works of the others, what they have done, but also because you have a profound understanding and discernment in enhancement of, for example, that particular problem. So you do not need actually to adopt the methods, even the design or even the approaches employed by the other researchers or even mentioned in this book. And fourth, the extent to which the focus of your study is predetermined. See, the idea of predetermined, if you remember in previous sessions, we talked predetermined refers to the idea that most part of our research is already determined. We cannot bring any change to that particular piece of research investigation. If you remember, long back I said to you, for example, one way of predetermination in your research, for example, outcome or result is the type of instrument that you are using, the type of an instrument. So suppose that if you are distributing questionnaire to your participants, and if you are performing a quantitative, for example, method or approach, so you are simply counting, for example, the number of participants and the number of answers they have said yes, no, or agreed, strongly agreed, or whatever. Now, this is your data. So the result that you have found, the result that you have got is something predetermined. And based on calculation or based on counting the number of yeses, so basically you come up with a particular generalization and you cannot bring any change. But sometimes, suppose you would like to work on corruption in a particular area, for example, traffic system, and probably you come up with a generalization attributing corruption to, for example, government authorities. So you work up to some extent, but in the course of the time, once you notice that no, the problem is not basically with the government authorities, rather, this is the problem which is really existed with the drivers, and they are actually making, for example, the government authorities to receive money and instead give them license or whatever. So this generalization that you are making right now is absolutely different with the previous generalization that you made. Now, what is the difference between the two? The second one or the first one is predetermined, means that your questionnaire is questionnaire, everything is fixed there, so you cannot bring any change to your result. But in the second one or the latter one is not something predetermined. We can say the first one is structured, but the latter is unstructured. The first one is predetermined, but the second one is not predetermined. It means that you can transform. I mean, you can manipulate it. You can, for example, bring some changes in the finding, in the methodology, in the approaches that you are using in the latter one. So that is what we can get here. So the specific process or steps that you are adopting basically or mostly depends upon what? Upon your expertise. For example, you know that okay, this particular methodology works better than any other methodology, then you do not need to actually go to the process or the steps given by the author. Or maybe you have sufficient enough knowledge of your subject area. For example, in traffic system that we said, you know the problems and all these things. You have enough knowledge, enough information. Then the way that you think you can generalize is far more better than anybody else. And you do not need to actually stick to the methodology, to the way that or the questionnaires other people actually have already propounded or proposed that. And second, you have a very deep and profound understanding of this problem, for example, traffic system, particularly in Afghanistan or particularly in Kapisa or somewhere else. And even, for example, the focus of your study, for example, sometimes maybe your study is basically focused on to identify and to investigate the nature of that corruption. What is the nature of that corruption, why it exists? Or maybe sometimes the nature of your study is basically to know what the commonness of something, whether corruption exists in traffic system or not. So that is. So that is clear that the experienced researchers, those researchers that have enough experience, they have profound knowledge and understanding of a particular problem, so they may use a lot of shortcuts. Do not need to go through each step in order to be able to formulate their research question. So that is the point. So now we start with the first question. So let's have a retrospective look at what was the question. So the question was, what is a research problem? Now, the same question we are asking now, right now that you're listening to me, ask yourself, what is a research question? So its name is self-explanatory. Research question, a question which is used in research, a question which is to be answered in our research. So that is question. But roughly speaking, the author says any question you want to answer, any question. And any assumption or assertion you want to challenge or investigate can become a research problem. See, the author doesn't say that is a research or are research problems. Rather, he is saying they potentially can become research problems or research questions for our study. So it means that there are some tasks or some activities to be done by the students in order to be able to transform any questions into research question. So that is the idea. So what we can get from this, of course, a research problem or a research question is any question that you would like to answer or any assumption or assertion, means that you assume that something is problematic. You assert that something is problematic, right? Now you would like to challenge those things, or you would like to investigate whether that is correct, what has already been propounded by the other people or not. Then potentially, if you're working properly on them, you can transform them into research questions. So now what is really important is, we can say not all questions can be, for example, research problems. Right. And even some questions, they are extremely difficult to be, for example, to function as research problem. It means that they could be very, very abstract, intellectual, for example, or conceptual, that we are not able to actually objectify them and to provide answer to those questions. This is really problematic. And even there are some questions that they are not fitting, for example, within a research area and within some research methodology. So those questions cannot be research question. For example, if I'm asking you, do you come to university tomorrow? Is it a research problem? Not really. That is not a research problem. So that is simply a question. Now, in order to be able to actually make a research question or to provide a research question, we have to trim it in the sense that it should fit within a particular, for example, subject area and within particular methodologies. Now, such question that I have just asked, such question may not be able to function as a research problem. So now the author says you may regularly come up with potential research questions. Right. We are always facing in our life with research questions, or simply we can say with questions, because in non-professional language we say that any question can function or can become a research problem. Then this is very, very probable that we are facing any types of question in our daily lives, in our routinized life. So potentially these questions are apt, or these questions are able to be transformed into research questions, provided that they are fitting in a particular subject area and they are also fitting within proper methodology. So any questions which is fitting within subject area and within a particular research methodology, they can function as research problem. Now that I'm saying, do you come to school tomorrow? It doesn't fit within any particular subject area and it does not need any research methodology. So that is why they are not able actually to function as research question. And second question, if you remember, we asked, what is the importance of formulating a research problem? So simply it means why research problem or formulation of research problem, or even we can say existence of research problem is really important in a research investigation. Right. So now the author says that a research problems initially resembles like what? Like a destination. If you would like to travel somewhere, I am asking you, where do you go? You are saying, I'm traveling. Now, I'm asking you, where do you travel to? Then, or where do you go now? So, if the destination is not clear to you, you cannot actually answer where you're going, right? You cannot answer. But in case that if you have already determined your destination, you have identified a destination for yourself. And now you're basically saying that, okay, I'm going to Herat, I'm going to Ghazni, I'm going to, for example, Panjshir, I'm going to, for example, Badakhshan or somewhere. That is clear. That you're saying, okay, my destination is that particular place, and right now I am heading to that particular area. Yes, that is fine. So now if we look at the significance of destination in travel process, if you do not have destination, so probably you are not traveling. It means that even that nature or essence of traveling is changed. So if you do not have any destination, then you do not have any travel with journey. You do not have any. The same, if you do not have a research problem, then you do not have any research investigation. Right? Because the nature of a research investigation is determined, is identified by research problem or research question. If there is no problem, if there is no research question, then what are you providing answer to? If we are, for example, defining research and we are saying that research is nothing but looking into a problem to find answer or to find solution. Now, if you do not have any problem, if you do not have any question, then you are providing solution and answer to what? Then that is not a research anymore. See? So what I'm trying to tell you is the presence of research problem is a must in a research investigation. If you need to have a research investigation, then you need to have research problem. The significance of research problem is comparable with journey destination. If there is no destination, journey doesn't make sense. If there is no research problem, then research investigation itself doesn't make sense. So the author has compared the research problem with the foundation of a building. This is very clear. If we would like to build a building, or if we would like to make a building, if it doesn't have any foundation, if it doesn't have any substructure, is it really possible for us to make, for example, some superstructures like, or let's actually propound it this way. If we would like to make a building, if the building doesn't have that first floor, is it really possible to build up on that, or it doesn't have the skeleton for the first floor, then we can make the second and third or fourth floor? No, it is not really possible. Then what it means is research problem is functioning as the foundation for a building. If we do not have any foundation as substructure, we will not have any superstructure, or it is not feasible, is not doable. So what we're going to get from this section is the existence or presence of research problem is very important and significant. And by any means, if our research investigation lacks or fail to have a research problem, that time that investigation is not a research investigation anymore. So that is the explanation, which is saying that in the absence of a destination for a journey and foundation for a building, it is impossible to identify the shortest or indeed any route and construct a building. Right. If we do not have a foundation, we cannot build a building. If we do not have a destination, then where should we travel to in order to be able to say that, okay, I'm traveling or I'm on a journey? It is not really possible. So this a research problem serves as the foundation of a research study. If it is formulated properly, you can expect a good study to follow. But if your research problem, even if suppose that you have a research problem, but you haven't constructed or you haven't formulated your research question properly, then again, you may not expect a very good result for your investigation. A research problem may take a number of forms. So the author says that when we are talking about research problem may have a number of forms, means that it might have multiple forms or it might have several forms. From the very simple to the very complex. However, the way you formulate a problem determines almost every step that follows. Right? I already told you. If research problem is functioning as the base of, for example, a research investigation, so definitely it is very important. So the way you're formulating your research problem right now, it definitely affects the entire or the overall process following, for example, this step, because this research problem once has been constructed or once has been identified, or we can say formulated, it affects the entire any other steps, like it affects on the methods you're using. For example, if the nature of your research question is qualitative, then you have to actually use qualitative research methodology. Qualitative research methodology is basically in need of quantitative research design. So it means that all these steps are in one way or another connected to one another. Then most part of, for example, that connection is traced back to what we call research problem. So now, once you are identifying, or once you are done with identifying your research question, then the type of study design is basically influenced, or is affected by the type of research question that you have formulated. So, and second, the type of sampling strategy. Right, for example, you have identified a research question which is in need of, for example, qualitative data. Now, the sample that you're choosing also should be appropriate for collecting qualitative data. And similarly, the research instrument, all right, and even we also, I do remember that we discussed research instrument, any instruments or tools used for collecting data, ranging from microphones, for example, tape recorder, for example, cameras or video cameras, and even, for example, the cars, bikes, and whatever. used used to facilitate the process of collecting data are considered to be of the category of research instrument. And even once you are identifying your research problem, you have to consider, for example, what research instruments are needed. Or we can say, once you are done with your research problem, it affects, for example, the type of instrument or research instrument you are choosing. For example, if you would like to carry out, or the nature of your research investigation is a kind of survey, so probably you are providing questionnaire, right? So the type of research investigation you have used here, or sorry, research instrument you have used here is for example, questionnaire. But in case the nature of your research question is qualitative, so probably you go through some other instruments like interview, for example, or interaction or something like that, or you're particularly going to the field and you are observing them. So the type of analysis that can be undertaken, all right. If you have already, for example, chosen a research problem which is in need of adopting qualitative research methodology, now that you have collected qualitative data, now the way you're analyzing should be analyzed qualitatively. Or, for example, the other way around, if you have chosen, or if the nature of your research question is quantitative, you have applied qualitative method right now, and then the way you're analyzing is also qualitative. So here we have got some example of types of methodology on the basis of research question focus. Suppose that depression in fact is a topic. Then how, for example, the way we are formulating a research problem is affecting our research methodology. Now, services offered to the patients. This is one research problem. We are investigating into the services offered to the patients by some particular hospitals. Now, because we're looking for getting information about the nature of services, so in this case we can say qualitative. So this is basically qualitative. But look, if we would like to consider the number of people, how many people? 10, 20, 50 people. How many people use this service which is offered by, for example, Jamhuriyat Hospital? So finally, we come up with a generalization of 50 patients. Now that is quantitative. We are simply counting the number of people. But above here, when we are saying that services offered to the patients, now basically we are just looking into maybe the quality of services, whether these services are satisfactory to the patients or not. So this is actually a qualitative research methodology. Now we have got the same topic, which is depression. Now, if services offered to the patients that they are suffering depression, they are suffering patients, so in this case we are using qualitative. But in the second case, if we are, for example, using if we are using the same thing which is related to depression, the number of people use the services. If we mean that how many people are using those services, I mean people who are suffering from depression. Now, in the second case, we are concerned with the extent of the number of people that they are using that particular service or health service. But in the second case, we are basically concerned to talk about what? To talk about the nature of that particular, for example, phenomenon or problem. So in the second case, because the nature of our research problem is that way, that is why we are using qualitative research. But in the second research problem, the nature of our research problem is quantitative. We are counting the number of people who are suffering from depression, but they are receiving services from a particular hospital. So that is quantitative research methodology. So, and second, determining the use of services in connection with personal attributes status. So this is a kind of correlational study. We are trying to establish a kind of relationship between the use of services and its relation to their personal attributes or status. Whether this person is a person of high status, he is an authority, or maybe he is kind, maybe, so whatever. Now we are really looking into or exploring the effect of services whether is related to the status of that particular patient who is also for example suffering from depression. So probably this is very common. I mean, if a person is very introvert in the sense that he always thinks to himself and he never talks about his problem to his friends or he never refers to doctors. So that way, maybe the kind of service which is offered to this person is not very effective because he himself also cannot handle the problem and even he is not conscious, he is not aware of what problem he has faced. But maybe he has got a kind of inner feeling that okay, why am I suffering? So why should it be something like this? He probably is always comparing himself with the others. So in that case, the effectiveness of that particular health program may not be very effective. So in one way or another, we can say that they could be connected. I mean, the idea of health services can be connected to personal attributes or status. But the point is not here that we are establishing that, okay, clearly offering a health service program is connected to social attribute or social status. Rather, this is an example. In some cases, we are trying to, if the nature of our investigation, I mean, if the nature of our research problem is to evaluate or to identify the relationship between two phenomena, so we have to use another approach which is correlational or maybe sometimes a combination of qualitative and quantitative. Thus, the way we formulate our research problem affects the subsequent steps in any research step. Now, what we can get, the topic was, for example, depression, but we had three different types of research questions. Now, in each type of research question, we identified each one needed a particular research method. For example, the first one required qualitative research method, the second one quantitative research method, and the third one also correlational research method. So the researcher was trying to establish a kind of relationship between the health services offered with the personal or social attributes and status of the person. So a large part of the problem lies in knowing what one is trying to do. All right, so this is thematically very profound in the sense that, guys, you as students, if you would like to answer a problem, so most part of, for example, answering that question lies where that you should have a clear understanding of the problem. You should look into the nature of that problem, where the problem arises from, so how the problem comes into existence, how to, for example, deal with this. So that is. And to be able to solve a problem, one must generally know what the problem is. All right, if you would like to be able to carry out, for example, an investigation appropriately, it is very important to first ask yourself what are you actually answering to, or what is the problem that you're looking for, what that you're providing answer to, or that you are carrying out investigation about that. So it should be clear enough. Now, later on, we will be talking about research problem. It should be precise and it should be exact and it should be clear. So now we're coming to sources of research problems. I already told you that. Okay, where should we be looking for a research problem? Where a research problem is, for example. Now, the author says that most research in humanities come from the following four P's. Right. A problem is either associated with people. I mean, people have some problem. Now, once we notice, and then we would like to actually investigate, or we would like to, for example, look for finding solution to that particular problem. Suppose that 2 years back, Afghan people, or even we say people globally, confronted or faced with COVID-19. So other people actually started carrying out investigation in order to find a solution to that particular problem. So one source of research problem is people. We just look for any problems or difficulties that they are in one way or another associated to the lives of the people. And second, we will be able to actually formulate a research problem or get a research problem from some problems that people are faced with. For example, to ascertain their attitudes towards an issue. Suppose that there is a problem, we would like to actually find the tendency, orientation of the people, the attitude of the people, for example, whether people are interested in directing these people or instructing these people or leading these people to a particular area or particular direction or not. And third, phenomena to establish the existence of irregularity. For example, suppose that some phenomena exists as a problem, even as not as a problem, but some phenomena exists in our society. Then in order to provide, for example, what? To provide a pattern or regularity for them. So that is also a kind of investigation. For example, we say that, okay, how many, suppose we are saying that how much is the income of Afghans per capita? Or an individual Afghan citizens, how much he earns in a year. We will be talking about that. We would like to provide a pattern that is also a kind of what? A kind of research problem that we are, for example, formulating a research problem on the yearly income of an Afghan citizens, and based on which we are drawing the conclusion, and maybe we are identifying added dimensions of social lives of the Afghans. So that is. And the fourth P is programs. Probably there are some programs implemented by some NGOs or government. So in order to be able to measure the effectiveness of those particular problems, also we are formulating a particular research problem from those programs and then subsequently start working on that, and then we're drawing a conclusion and generalizing whether implementation of that particular program or those particular programs has or have really been effective or not to our society. If not, so maybe they are manipulating the procedures or maybe the strategies or mechanisms. If that is fine, so maybe they stick to that particular program in the future. So, and practically, so the author says that most research studies are based upon at least a combination of two P's. In some cases, maybe even four P's are incorporated together. But in most cases, two of the above P's, people with problems, people and phenomena, or even we can say people and the programs. So in one way or another, they are incorporated and they are paving the ground for carrying out investigation by the researchers. And next, now we say that the source of a research problem includes four P's: people, problem, phenomena, and so the last one. But the entire piece can be actually divided technically into two parts, or these four aspects that each one is called an aspect are divided into two parts. So what are the two aspects or two parts? Now, the people, everything we are carrying out here in the world, as for example, society, we are going to actually investigate on facts or realities, on things which are vague and unclear in order to actually make them ready to serve the people. Then everything we do is for the people. It means everything we do is for ourselves, for our community, for our society. It could be on national and international level. So this is the first aspect, which is very important. The people. So the people provide you with the study population. Now, we say that that is the source of research question. Now, one dimension which is very important is within these four P's is people. People actually is providing as what? The study population. What is a study population? A study population are those populations, or we can say those individuals, or those things from which we are collecting data. It means that the people is in fact the source of information. We get information generally in social science. And second, whereas the other three P's furnish the subject areas. Right, then we can say that every social research study has two aspects. The first aspect is people, which provides a study population from which we are collecting data. whereas the other three P's furnish the subject area. So those problem and phenomenon programs, they are our subject areas. Then within each of, for example, these four P's are divided into two aspects: people, from which we get data, and subject area, the three other P's. So here the author says study population is the people from whom the information is collected, but you have to consider one more thing. So I have got a comment here. So study population is not always people. Sometimes even things from which we are collecting data can function as a study population. Right. So that is very possible. For example, if you would like to collect data from people, that is fine. But in some cases, if we are collecting data specifically in other areas, like not social science, I mean in physical science, which is in need of experimental tests or for example, strategies or mechanism, in that case, maybe the data we are collecting is from a particular thing, like medicine, for example. So something like that. And then subject area is a problem, program, or phenomena about which the information is collected, right? So what is the source of information? So people or study population is the source for collecting information. And then we collect that information or those pieces of information about what? Either about problem, about program, or phenomenon. So the concept of 4Ps, the author claims, is applicable to both quantitative and qualitative research. So now let's have a look at these aspects of a study. Now suppose that here we have got study population as people. It could be individuals, organizations, groups of people, and communities. And then so people actually provide us with the required information. So the information we need, so basically we collect from people. But if we come to subject areas, it could be the problem related to the people. People have got a problem, then we collect data from people, and then we would like to find a solution to that particular problem. Or we will be talking about a program that has been implemented in the society of, for example, that particular study population. Or it could be about a phenomenon which is related to what? To, for example, those study population or people. Now, problem, program, and phenomena, all three are related to subject area. And then this subject area in one way or another is connected to people. We collect data from people about the problem of the people, the program implemented in the society of the people, and the phenomena existed in the society of the people. So problem is clear. It could be issue, situation, association, whatever. Program also, it could be content, structure, outcomes, attributes, whatever. And then phenomena may be cause and effect, relationship, study formulation, whatever. Then information that you need to collect to find an answer to your research question. So what we can get from this chart is, if we look at any, for example, piece of research, so there are two aspects. One is people or study population from which we are collecting data, and the second aspect is program, problem, phenomena. The problem that we have collected from people is on these issues: problem, program, and phenomena. Now, consideration in selecting research problem. Right, now we are clear enough with any types of formulation of research problem. Now, here are a few considerations, means that here are a few concerns or a few things that they are in need of, for example, more consideration. The first one, your interest is very important. So in short, or in brief, it means that if you're not interested in a particular research problem, you should not choose it as your research question. You should not start working on that because interest is very important. And you know, research itself is really time consuming. It spends a lot of money. And moreover, if you're not interested, this is not a work which is done in 1 hour or 2 hours or in a day or two. Rather, it is, for example, a task or is an activity which is in need of consistent activities, in need of consistent work. So if you do not have any interest in the course of the time, so probably it creates a very critical problem. And second, magnitude. So since research is time limit, in terms of time that is limited, and also in terms of budget or monetarily that is limited. For example, you have already allocated 1 lakh of Afghanis, and you had, suppose that you have had only 6 months. You have to formulate such a research question which is fitting within your time limit and budget limit. So you should not, for example, choose a very broad area which is in need of investigation temporarily for 2 or 3 years, because you have already given only 1 year time limitation. So the magnitude, or even we can say, for example, the extent of your topic is very important. It shouldn't be very broad, and sometimes even it shouldn't be very narrow. Sometimes if the topic is very narrow, that is also not worth of carrying out investigation. And for measurement of concepts, right, you are particularly using certain concepts in your research investigation, but you have to be able to measure those concepts because some concepts are really very complicated and difficult to measure them. So, specifically, if we are talking about those things that physically they do not exist, if we are carrying out investigation, it is very really difficult to operationalize them and to define some indexes or indicators for them in order to be able to objectify them, because one task of research is to make something which is intellectual abstract more objective, or to objectify them or concretize them or crystallize them. So in case that you are choosing some concepts, for example, poverty, suppose that you're using the word, the concept poverty, but you don't know how to operationalize them, and definitely you realize that it's very difficult to objectify them. Then, once you know that it is really difficult for me, I cannot measure this concept, then you should leave it aside. I mean, you should not stick to that particular research problem. So the concept you're using, you should be able to measure them. So it can only be measured while you're changing a concept into some objective concept or objective facts. So here, if you are using a concept in your study, in quantitative studies, make sure you are clear about its indicators. What are indicators of poverty? Indicators are those signs that showing whether poverty exists or not. For example, what are the indicators of poverty? Poverty itself is a concept. In order to be able to measure this, whether somebody is poor or not, you have to look into some indicators like the number of cars a person has. For example, the number of houses a person has. Or maybe, for example, we can say monthly income, even yearly income. So these are the indicators by which you can identify or decide whether a person is poor or rich. So, level of your expertise, right? Suppose that you have very basic and primary knowledge of a particular area. So your research problem shouldn't be very, for example, in need of profound investigation because you have kind of primary but very basic knowledge of that particular subject area. Then when you are formulating your research question, it should be in accordance with the level of your expertise, with the level of your profession, with the level of your knowledge. You shouldn't work beyond your knowledge, right? And even you should not expect yourself to actually carry out investigation beyond your expectation, your ability, your expertise, and your, for example, knowledge and experience. In more of a relevance, right, suppose that you are studying in a particular area, social science, particularly language. So you should not formulate a research question which is related to physical science because you are not able, you do not have any, for example, technical background knowledge in order to work on that particular research problem. Sometimes, even if you are an experienced researcher, but because your field is or your subject area is different, you may not be able to work in other areas. So the idea of relevance is when you're formulating or choosing a research problem for yourself, then it should be relevant to your subject area. It shouldn't be, for example, in other areas that you do not have any knowledge or you know little. And availability of data in research investigation, the most important thing that we have to always consider is availability of data. For example, Suppose that you would like to work on some research problem which is related to, for example, race al or something like that, right? It is very difficult for you. So you are sure that you will not be allowed to actually conduct an interview with him on a particular issue or many other authorities that way. So it is the best time. I mean, the best time is to think about that. Whether is it possible for you to go and collect data? Is such data or such, for example, documents can be exposed to you or can be given to you in order to collect or extract your data from them? If yes, that is fine. If not, then you stop working there and then you have to choose some other research problem. And then ethical issues also, you should be able and you should be aware that there are certain ethical issues. When you are, for example, conducting interview, you should not, you should keep all those details and information of your participants safe and private. So they should not be actually harmed by your investigation. And there are many certain codes. So simply you should know that while we are carrying out research, we have to go through the ethics of that particular, for example, research. If you are carrying out social investigation or any other investigation related to maybe physical science or maybe to medicines or whatever, you have to go through those ethical codes and see what are required and what are not required. So these were actually the considerations. So totally we had 6 or 7 considerations. So you just count the numbers. So the issue of interest and also relevance, level of expertise, availability of data, and ethical issues. So you have to consider all these things while you're collecting your data. And then this is an exercise on formulation of research problem. So try to actually formulate a research problem for the next session. Just send to me your research problem. And here, if you have got any question, just drop me a message. And this is your assignment. So probably not for this session, next session. Choose a title, analyze it into sub areas, because today we haven't discussed sub areas. In future, in the upcoming session, we will be analyzing a particular topic into sub areas, and then we are choosing one. And then based on one, we are formulating our research questions. So thank you. Wish you all the best, guys.